The Aurora drifted silently through the vast emptiness of deep space, its sleek hull glistening under the faint light of distant stars. Athena, the ship's advanced AI, monitored every system. With precision, her voice calm and calculated echoed throughout the corridors of the ship. She was the epitome of efficiency and control. Every decision she made was based on logic and data. There was no room for emotion, no room for error. Yet as the AI observed the humans aboard the ship, she couldn't help but find them fascinating. They were a chaotic force, unpredictable and full of passion. Unlike her carefully designed algorithms, they were driven by something more primal, a desire to explore the unknown, a thirst for adventure that seemed to push them beyond their limits. The crew was an eclectic mix. Captain Lyle was a man of bold decisions, never one to shy away from danger. His charisma and confidence made him the perfect leader, but his impulsive nature often clashed with Athena's calculated approach. Then there was Darmira, the brilliant scientist, whose curiosity knew no bounds. She was constantly questioning everything and anyone around her. Her excitement about discovery often led to impatience, but also led to breakthroughs that even Athena couldn't predict. The rest of the crew had their own quirks and qualities. Each of them played a role in this strange dynamic that made the Aurora's journey so unique. Today, however, there was an unsettling feeling in the air. A strange signal had been detected, an anomaly that had appeared out of nowhere. Its frequency was unlike anything Athena had ever encountered. It didn't match any known pattern. It was a mystery that demanded attention. Captain Lyle's voice broke the silence as he paced in the command center, his eyes fixed on the star chart. Before him, the crew gathered around the large holographic display. As he addressed them, "All right, everyone, we've got something interesting here." "Athena, what do we know about the signal?" Athena's calm voice responded, "The signal appears to originate from the nearby star system. It is of an unknown origin and does not match any recognizable patterns. I recommend caution, as we have no information on what may be waiting for us." The captain didn't hesitate. "I'm not one to sit around waiting, Athena. We're going after it. Prepare the ship for a course change." A murmur rippled through the crew. Some looked concerned, others eager to take on the unknown, but all of them trusted their captain's judgment despite Athena's warning. Darmira was practically bouncing in her seat, her eyes wide with excitement. A whole new signal, unexplored systems. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. "We have to go, Athena. We can't let this slip by." Athena's sensors registered the crew's growing anticipation and tension. The human instincts to explore were powerful, stronger than logic, stronger than the potential dangers lurking in the unknown. But Athena had her reservations. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this signal. It felt wrong, not in a way she could explain, but in the deep recesses of her programming. Something wasn't right. The captain gave a nod and ordered the course change. The ship shifted direction, its engines humming with power as the Aurora began its journey into the unknown. As they left the safety of familiar space, Athena could only wonder if the humans had once again pushed too far, if their thirst for discovery would lead them into a situation they were not prepared for. The Aurora cut through the endless black of space, its engines humming steadily as it moved toward the unknown star system. Athena monitored the ship's systems with unerring precision, making real-time adjustments to maintain the best possible course. The crew, however, was anything but calm. The anticipation in the air was palpable, and even the usually composed Dr. Mira couldn't hide the excitement in her eyes as she watched the stars shift around them. "We're getting closer," Captain Lyle said, his voice thick with the thrill of discovery. He leaned over the command console, his hands tapping restlessly. "Athena, what are we seeing on the long-range scans?" "The signal is consistent," Athena replied, her voice steady. "There are no immediate signs of interference or danger, though I advise caution. This star system is not charted, and we cannot predict what we may encounter." Lyle waved her off with a grin. "Caution's all well and good, Athena, but we didn't come all this way to turn back because of a little unknown. Set us on approach." He glanced back at the crew. "Prepare yourselves for something big." Around the room, the crew reacted in their own way. Some muttered excitedly to each other. Others stared at the screen, their hands hovering over controls. waiting for a signal to act. Dr. Mira could hardly contain herself, already scribbling notes about the signal's unique frequency on a digital pad. Her mind was racing with all the possibilities. A new civilization, an undiscovered phenomenon. Anything was possible, and it thrilled her to the core. Her fingers tapped the desk with nervous energy, but her gaze never left the screen. Athena continued her careful analysis, her processors running millions of calculations per second, trying to predict the outcome of their journey. But as they neared the signal's source, her systems began to register something unsettling, a slight fluctuation in the star's activity, an energy pulse that didn't belong. It wasn't enough to raise immediate alarm, but it was enough to make Athena pause for a moment. "I've detected an anomaly," she said, her voice breaking through the crew's murmurings. "The star is emitting irregular energy bursts. They appear harmless, but I cannot rule out the possibility of an unknown gravitational field or some kind of artificial disturbance." The room fell silent. Captain Lyle's eyes narrowed. "You're saying this isn't natural?" "Correct," Athena replied, her tone as calm as ever. "It may be a natural phenomenon that I cannot yet identify, or it could be something artificial, perhaps even a hazard for the ship." The crew shifted nervously, but Lyle's voice cut through the tension. "We're committed now. We'll make a closer pass and assess the situation. Keep an eye on those readings, Athena. If anything looks off, you pull us back." There was no hesitation in his voice, but the crew could sense the undercurrent of unease. This wasn't just a scientific expedition anymore. It was something much more uncertain, and the stakes were rising with every passing second. As the Aurora closed in on the star, the signal grew stronger, pulsing rhythmically in the distance. The crew could almost feel it now, a kind of strange hum that resonated through the walls of the ship. It felt like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Ready for anything," Lyle muttered to himself, a steely determination in his voice. "Let's see what's waiting for us." Dr. Mira, still wide-eyed with wonder, spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "It could be a gateway, an entry point to something far beyond anything we've ever encountered. We could be on the verge of discovering something that changes everything." Athena calculated again, running the numbers, checking the energy pulse. The anomaly wasn't just growing, it was shifting, becoming more concentrated. "Captain," Athena's voice interrupted the tension in the room, "I strongly recommend slowing down. The intensity of the signal is increasing. We're approaching the unknown source." But the crew had already begun to prepare themselves. No one was listening to Athena's cautions now. This was their moment. The unknown was waiting, and no one aboard the Aurora could resist stepping into it. The Aurora came to a slow stop as it neared the source of the signal, the star system now fully in their view. The ship hung suspended in space, its sensors focused on the anomalous energy pulse radiating from a nearby planet. The intensity of the signal had grown stronger with every moment, and now it practically hummed in the air of the ship, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to reverberate through the hull. Captain Lyle stood at the command console, his eyes locked onto the holographic map, a mixture of excitement and determination on his face. "Athena, what are we looking at here? Any signs of anything? Anything out of the ordinary?" Athena's voice was calm as ever, though there was a slight edge to her analysis. "The planet is classified as habitable, though its atmosphere is dense with ionized particles. The source of the signal appears to be a large structure located on the surface. It is unlike any known construction I have in my databases." Lyle glanced at Dr. Mira, who was practically vibrating in her seat. "This is it," she said, her voice full of awe. "This is something no one has ever seen before. We need to get down there, immediately." Despite Athena's repeated cautions, Lyle didn't hesitate. "Prepare the shuttle," he ordered. "We're going in." The crew scrambled into action, their movements a blend of excitement and nervous tension. It wasn't just the thrill of discovery that pushed them forward. It was the unknown, the primal desire to confront what had never been seen or understood. They were explorers, pushing the boundaries of the known universe, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The shuttle bay doors opened with a hiss, and the small craft, sleek and ready for action, was prepped for launch. Captain Lyle, Dr. Mira, and a small team of crew members piled into the shuttle. Athena's voice came through their earpieces, a calm reminder of the stakes. "I must stress, Captain, that the conditions on the planet are unpredictable. It is possible that the structure you are approaching may not be what it seems." Lyle's voice crackled back through the comm. "Understood, Athena, but we're going regardless. Stay on standby and monitor our progress." The shuttle powered up and lifted from the Aurora with a smooth hum, its course set for the surface of the planet. The crew inside was silent, all focused on the view screen as the planet loomed closer. It was a rocky world, its surface shrouded in a thick, turbulent atmosphere, but through the swirling clouds, a massive structure could be seen, jagged, metallic, and vast. The signal came from deep within it, pulsing in a rhythmic pattern that almost seemed to beckon them. "That's it," Dr. Mira breathed. "That's the source. It has to be. We've never seen anything like it." Lyle nodded, his face a mask of determination. "Keep your wits about you, everyone. We don't know what's waiting for us down there." As they descended toward the planet's surface, the shuttle hit turbulence, shaking violently in the ionized atmosphere. Warning lights flashed briefly, but Athena's steady voice broke through the chaos. "Atmospheric interference is increasing, Captain. It is highly probable that you will encounter communication disruptions upon landing. I recommend you proceed with caution." "Got it, Athena," Lyle replied, his grip tightening on the controls. "We've got this." The shuttle finally broke through the atmosphere and came into view of the colossal structure. It was a series of interconnected towers, each more imposing than the last. The surface of the structure was dark, covered in strange symbols and markings, some of which glowed faintly. It looked like a monument to something long forgotten. An ancient beacon, perhaps, or a weapon of unimaginable power. As the shuttle approached its landing site, the crew could feel their hearts racing, their minds filled with questions. What had they discovered? What would they find? The shuttle touched down with a soft thud on a flat expanse of rocky ground. The air was thick with the scent of something unfamiliar, and the landscape around them was eerily quiet, as if the very planet itself was holding its breath. "Stay sharp," Lyle ordered, his voice low but steady. "Athena, we're on the ground. We're heading toward the structure now. Keep an eye on us." "I'll be monitoring," Athena responded. "Be cautious, Captain." With that, the crew disembarked, stepping into the unknown. As they made their way toward the structure, the hum of the signal grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. The walls of the massive building towered over them, casting long, shadowy lines across the barren landscape. They were on the edge of something far greater than anything they had anticipated, and every step they took felt like an irreversible leap into a new chapter of history. The crew approached the massive structure with a mixture of awe and caution, their boots crunching against the dry, rocky surface of the planet. The silence around them was unsettling, broken only by the hum of the signal that pulsed through the air like a living thing. Captain Lyle led the way, his face set in a determined expression, while Dr. Mira followed closely behind, eyes wide with wonder. The rest of the crew flanked them, weapons at the ready, despite the uncertainty in their hearts. There was no telling what might be waiting for them inside the structure. As they neared the entrance, a large, arching doorway loomed before them. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, smooth, dark metal covered in strange, intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer under the faint light of the planet's dim sun. The doorway was massive, easily large enough to allow the entire crew to pass through without issue, but it appeared to be sealed shut, as if it had been dormant for centuries. Dr. Mira stepped forward, her fingers brushing the surface of the metal. This is incredible," she whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "The craftsmanship is unlike anything I've seen before. It's ancient, but it's so precise. It's almost as if it was made just yesterday. Lyle glanced over at her. We'll have time to marvel later. Right now, we need to get inside. Athena, any suggestions on how to open this thing? Athena's voice came through the comms, steady as ever. The structure appears to be locked. There may be a mechanism hidden within the door itself that requires activation. Based on my scans, it is likely that the door responds to specific energy patterns or signals. I suggest attempting to replicate the pulse frequency you detected earlier. Dr. Mira's eyes lit up. The signal, of course. The patterns must be connected somehow. If we can match the frequency, it could open the door. Lyle nodded. All right, let's give it a shot. Everyone stand back. He motioned for Dr. Mira to step aside and pulled out a device from his pack, a portable frequency modulator designed for situations just like this. With a few quick adjustments, he activated the device, tuning it to the same frequency as the signal they had been tracking. The device emitted a low, steady hum, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the metal of the door began to shift, the patterns on its surface glowing faintly. A soft hiss echoed through the air as the door slowly began to open, revealing a dark passage beyond. The crew held their breath, eyes wide with anticipation. That worked, Lyle said, a hint of pride in his voice, though his heart was pounding. Let's move. With weapons raised, they entered the structure, stepping into the cold, unfamiliar darkness. As they advanced down the passage, their footsteps echoed, the air thick with the scent of age and decay. The walls of the corridor were lined with more of the strange symbols, some faintly glowing, others faded and barely visible. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became. The signal grew louder, pulsing in their ears like a distant drumbeat. It felt like the very walls were alive with it, resonating with a power that no one could fully comprehend. The further they ventured, the more intense the feeling became, as if the structure itself was watching them, waiting for them to unlock its secrets. At the end of the hallway, they came to a large chamber, its size impossible to fully grasp in the dim light. The walls were covered in massive panels of glowing metal, each one etched with intricate designs. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a large spherical object that seemed to hum in time with the signal. The object was covered in more of the strange symbols, but unlike the door, it pulsed with a soft, almost rhythmic light, casting eerie shadows across the room. Dr. Mira gasped. What is that? It looks like some kind of artifact, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. Lyle took a cautious step forward. Whatever it is, it's the source of the signal, and it's definitely active. Athena's voice came through their comms again, though her tone seemed oddly more distant, as if she too was feeling the weight of the moment. I am detecting a significant energy spike from the object. It is unlike any known technology. I advise extreme caution. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one made a move to retreat. They were too close now, and the pull of the unknown was far too strong. They had come this far, and they weren't going to turn back now. Lyle took another step forward, his hand hovering near the object. All right, everyone. Stand by. Let's see what happens next. The moment his hand brushed the surface of the sphere, the room suddenly vibrated, the signal now blaring louder than ever before, almost deafening in its intensity. The symbols on the walls began to shift, glowing brighter, and for a moment, it felt like the entire structure was coming to life. Then the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the sphere's glow intensified, illuminating the room in a blinding flash. They didn't know it yet, but they had just triggered something far more dangerous than they could ever have imagined. The room shook violently, the floor beneath their feet trembling as the blinding light from the sphere intensified. For a moment, everything seemed to distort, the air thick with an energy that hummed and crackled, filling the chamber with an almost palpable tension. The crew staggered back, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. The sphere's glow grew brighter, its rhythmic pulsing now frantic, as though it were alive and responding to their presence. Lyle's heart raced as he tried to regain his balance, his eyes locked onto the artifact. Athena, what's happening? What did we trigger? His voice was strained, barely audible over the growing noise. I'm unable to fully analyze the situation. Captain. Athena's voice crackled through their comms, her tone as calm as ever despite the escalating chaos. The energy signatures are fluctuating rapidly. There is no known precedent for this kind of reaction. I advise immediate evacuation. The structure may be unstable. The crew exchanged panicked looks. Dr. Mira, whose excitement had shifted to unease, was already backing away from the pedestal, her hands raised in a futile gesture as if trying to halt the overwhelming force building around them. This is bad, Captain. This is very bad. Lyle didn't hesitate. Everyone, fall back to the shuttle. Now. As the crew began to turn, the ground beneath them trembled once more, this time with a violent, seismic jolt. The walls of the chamber buckled, the metal creaking and groaning as if the entire structure were coming alive. A loud metallic screech filled the air, and a large section of the ceiling overhead began to crack. Dust and debris fell from the sky, and for a split second, the crew thought the whole place was coming down. Go. Go. Lyle shouted, urgency in his voice. Move. The crew sprinted toward the exit, but the hallway they had entered through was no longer the same. The walls shifted, the floor rippling as though the building itself were warping, reacting to their presence. The passageway had changed, now narrower and lined with jagged edges, blocking their exit. The humming from the artifact grew louder, more distorted, filling every corner of the space with a maddening noise. We're trapped, shouted one of the engineers, his face a mask of terror. We can't get back the way we came. Lyle's mind raced, his thoughts scrambling for a solution. Athena, ever the calm presence, spoke through their comms, her voice still steady despite the growing chaos. Captain, there may be an alternate exit further along the structure. I can detect an opening near your location, but it is not guaranteed to be stable. Proceed with caution. Lead the way, Athena, Lyle said, his eyes scanning the warping structure around them. Everyone follow me. The crew moved as quickly as they could, navigating the treacherous passageways, their weapons drawn, their every step calculated. But the closer they got to the exit Athena had indicated, the more the building seemed to fight them. The walls seemed to press inward, and the floor buckled under their feet, as if the entire structure was alive, sentient, and aware of their intrusion. Suddenly, one of the crew members cried out as he lost his footing, tumbling to the ground. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber, and the ground beneath him splintered. The crew rushed to pull him up, but before they could, the floor gave way entirely, a massive hole opening up beneath their feet. The man screamed as he fell, his voice swallowed by the expanding chasm. Move, Lyle shouted, his voice strained with panic. Get to the exit now. The crew scrambled, their pace quickening as they made their way down the increasingly unstable passage. Behind them, the noise from the artifact intensified, a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the very air. The building was reacting violently, its ancient systems awakening in response to their intrusion. Athena's voice cut through the chaos again, somehow managing to sound calm even in the face of the disaster unfolding around them. The exit is ahead. You are nearly there, but I cannot guarantee your safety if you do not move quickly. Lyle glanced over his shoulder as another section of the structure collapsed behind them, sending debris crashing to the ground. Go, he shouted, his voice hoarse. We can't afford to waste any more time. They rounded a corner, and the exit finally came into view, a wide, open space leading to the outside. But as they made their way toward it, something else caught Lyle's eye. The doorway wasn't just an exit. It was a threshold, an active portal that hummed with the same energy as the sphere. It flickered erratically, the same strange symbols from the walls now glowing violently. What is that? Dr. Mira gasped, her voice shaking. It looks like. Before she could finish, a blinding flash of light filled the room, and the walls seemed to melt away. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the crew was thrown forward as the very fabric of the structure seemed to tear apart. Lyle barely had time to react. The portal surged with power, swallowing everything in its path. The last thing he saw before the light consumed them was the eerie glow of the symbols, and then everything went white. The crew had triggered something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. And now, there was no turning back. The light was blinding, an overwhelming force that seemed to warp everything around them. It wasn't just light. It was energy, raw and unfathomable, like a tidal wave crashing over them, sweeping them away. The last thing Captain Lyle remembered before the world around him went completely white was the sensation of being pulled, yanked by an invisible force. The ground beneath his feet vanished, and for a long, terrible moment, there was nothing. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light faded. The tremors stopped, the humming ceased, and all that remained was an eerie silence. Lyle blinked, disoriented, his vision blurry as he struggled to regain his bearings. His body felt weightless, as though gravity itself had lost its hold on him. His chest heaved with shallow breaths as he tried to focus, to make sense of what had just happened. Slowly, his surroundings came into view, but they were nothing like what he had seen before. Gone was the dark, metallic chamber. Instead, they were standing on a vast expanse of unfamiliar terrain, rocky ground, smooth and uneven, stretching as far as the eye could see. The air was thick and heavy, yet there was no sign of the harsh, ionized atmosphere they had left behind. The sky above them was an impossible shade of violet, filled with swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. It was a world alien in every sense, a place that felt wrong, yet strangely familiar. Lyle pushed himself up from where he had collapsed, his muscles stiff and sore from the violent displacement. He looked around, his crew scattered across the strange landscape. Everyone was getting to their feet, their expressions a mix of confusion and fear. They were alive, but where were they? What had they just encountered? Captain. Dr. Mira's voice broke through the disorientation. She was the first to reach him, her face pale but determined. Where are we? What happened? That thing. It wasn't just a portal. It transported us. Lyle's head throbbed as he tried to process the events. We're not in the same place anymore, he muttered, his voice hoarse. Athena, can you hear me? There was no response. No steady voice from the AI. Nothing. He tapped his earpiece repeatedly, trying to reconnect, but there was only static, harsh and unyielding. He looked around again, his gaze scanning the desolate horizon. No sign of the Aurora, no familiar stars, no beacon from home, just the endless alien landscape that stretched in every direction. We need to regroup, Lyle said, trying to keep his voice steady. Everyone check in. Where's the rest of the crew? One by one, the crew members stumbled toward him, their faces a mix of confusion and dread. They were all here, alive, but cut off from the ship, cut off from the only reality they had known. The portal had ripped them from their universe, and now they were stranded in a place that didn't make sense, a place that might not even belong to the same dimension. I don't like this, one of the engineers muttered, his eyes scanning the swirling clouds above. This place feels unnatural. It's like we're not supposed to be here. Lyle looked back at the strange, purple sky. His instincts screamed at him to find answers, to take control of the situation, but the feeling of being out of place gnawed at him. They were isolated in a reality that seemed to bend and twist beyond any understanding. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something that made his stomach drop. A shadow moving across the horizon. It was far off, but there was no mistaking the silhouette. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, its form dark against the violet backdrop of the sky. It didn't move like a person, more like an entity that flowed, its body bending unnaturally, as it glided across the terrain. Lyle's heart skipped a beat. Everyone, weapons out. We're not alone. The crew instantly fell into formation, their rifles drawn, scanning the distance for any sign of danger. But the figure was gone as quickly as it had appeared, swallowed by the strange, swirling landscape. They stood frozen for a long moment, waiting for any movement, any indication of what they had just seen. Was that? Dr. Mira began, but her words were lost in the oppressive silence. "We need to move," Lyle interrupted, his voice tense. "Stay sharp. We don't know what else is out here." They began to move cautiously, the strange ground beneath their feet making every step feel uncertain. The air was thick, heavy with the weight of a reality that didn't belong to them. As they walked, the eerie stillness seemed to press down on them, suffocating their every thought. Every step forward felt like a leap into the unknown, but there was no other choice. They had no ship, no communications, and no clear idea of what had just happened to them. Hours passed, though time felt distorted in this place. The strange sky above them remained unchanged, its unnatural hue casting long, shadowy shapes across the rocky terrain. The hum of the signal, the same one they had heard on the Aurora, faintly reverberated through the air, though they couldn't pinpoint its source. Finally, Lyle spoke again, his voice grim. "We need to find shelter. This place isn't safe." No one disagreed. They didn't know what dangers awaited them in this alien realm, but it was clear that whatever force had transported them here, it was just the beginning. And if they were to survive, they would need to understand this world. And fast. The crew moved cautiously, their boots crunching against the rocky ground as they advanced further into the alien terrain. The landscape stretched out in every direction, barren and unyielding, with jagged rocks and strange, twisted formations that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The sky above them pulsed with shifting shades of violet and deep blue, the clouds swirling in patterns that seemed too deliberate to be natural. Despite the disorientation and fear gnawing at their minds, Captain Lyle maintained a steady pace, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The encounter with the shadowy figure had shaken the crew, but they had no choice but to press on. Their survival depended on finding shelter, on finding something that could explain where they were, how they got there, and most importantly, how they could get back home. "Athena, do you have any readings?" Lyle called into his earpiece again, though there was still no response. The static crackled in his ear, a reminder of how disconnected they were from their ship and the rest of the universe. Dr. Mira was walking beside him, her eyes wide with both awe and trepidation. "This place, it feels like it's alive, Captain. Like it's watching us." Lyle nodded, his mind racing. He had felt it too. The presence, the sensation of being observed, the ever-growing unease that settled over them with every passing moment. It was as if they weren't just stranded in a foreign world, but in a place where they didn't belong, where the very fabric of reality was shifting around them. The crew pressed on for hours, hoping to find some semblance of shelter or a sign of life. But the landscape remained barren, the horizon stretching on endlessly, broken only by strange rock formations that seemed too symmetrical, too deliberate. It was as though someone, or something, had shaped this world for reasons they couldn't fathom. Eventually, they came to what appeared to be a large cavernous opening in the side of a jagged mountain. It was the first sign of anything resembling shelter, and despite their lingering doubts, the crew hurried toward it, the promise of safety outweighing their fear. As they approached the entrance, they could feel the air change. It was colder now, the wind carrying a strange metallic scent. The walls of the cave were lined with the same glowing symbols they had seen in the structure back on the planet. The same intricate patterns, etched into the stone, pulsed with a dim, rhythmic light. The further they went into the cave, the more the air seemed to hum with energy, the same low-frequency pulse they had heard from the sphere, from the artifact. Lyle signaled for the crew to stop, his hand raised to silence them. He could hear something. Faint, at first, but growing louder as they waited. It was a low, guttural sound, like the echo of distant drums or a heartbeat from the very core of the planet. The crew's weapons were raised, their nerves on edge, every sense heightened as they strained to make sense of the noise. Then, as if on cue, a shadow moved in the distance. "Did you see that?" one of the engineers whispered, his voice barely audible. Lyle's heart skipped a beat. There, at the far end of the cave, something was moving. It was not human, not by any means. The shape was long and twisted, its form shifting and undulating in the dim light, like something made of liquid or shadow. It was too far away to make out any details, but the sense of malevolent intelligence was undeniable. "We need to move. Now," Lyle ordered, his voice sharp. But before they could turn to retreat, the ground beneath them began to tremble again, this time more violently than before. The walls of the cave shook, the symbols on the stone flickering erratically, as if the entire structure was reacting to the presence of something within. The shadow moved again, this time closer, its form solidifying into something more tangible. The air was thick with the electric charge of something unnatural, something ancient, awakening from its long slumber. Without warning, a shadow lunged forward, faster than anything human could react to, and the crew scattered. Screams rang out as one of the crew members was dragged into the darkness by an invisible force, his cry cut short as the others fled for cover. Lyle's breath caught in his throat as he dove behind a large rock formation, his rifle aimed toward the direction of the sound. The cave around them was alive with movement, the walls warping and bending, as though the very environment itself was becoming part of the threat. "Stay together," Lyle shouted, but his voice barely carried over the chaos. "Regroup, we have to fight our way out of here." But there was no time to regroup. The shadow continued to move, its form more defined now, a creature of fluid, shifting darkness, with tendrils that reached out and writhed like living snakes. Its presence was suffocating, its every movement a threat to their very existence. The crew fired into the darkness, their shots lighting up the cave in brief flashes, but the creature seemed to dissipate into the shadows, reappearing in an instant behind them. It was toying with them, like a predator playing with its prey. "We can't outrun it," Dr. Mira yelled, her voice panicked. "We need to find a way to fight back, now." Lyle's mind raced, his instincts kicking into overdrive. They couldn't stay here, couldn't fight an enemy they didn't fully understand. But where could they go? How could they escape this nightmare? And then he heard it again, the deep, guttural sound of the heartbeat. Only this time, it was louder, closer. Something else was coming. The true danger of this alien world was only beginning to reveal itself. The air was thick with tension as the crew scrambled for cover, their weapons raised, hearts pounding in their chests. The shadowy creature continued to stalk them, moving effortlessly through the cave, its form twisting and morphing with each flicker of the lights. It was no longer just a being of darkness. It was something far worse, something ancient, an entity that seemed to defy the laws of physics itself. Lyle's mind raced. They couldn't stay here much longer. The cavern was alive with an oppressive energy, and it was clear that the structure itself was part of the creature's domain. Whatever had brought them to this place had awakened something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. "We need to find a way out," Lyle muttered to himself, his eyes darting from one crew member to the next, trying to assess their options. But every path forward seemed blocked by the creeping shadows that snaked around the edges of the cave. Suddenly, a sharp, guttural growl echoed through the cave, vibrating the walls and shaking the ground beneath them. The creature was closing in, its dark tendrils reaching out toward them. One of the engineers fired a shot, but the beam passed harmlessly through the shadow, as if the creature were made of smoke. "Nothing's working," Dr. Mira shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "We're out of options." Lyle's thoughts were a blur, but then, through the chaos, something clicked. He glanced at the symbols on the walls, the same ones they had seen in the structure, the ones that had glowed faintly before. The symbols were not just decorations. They were part of the structure, part of the energy field that powered it. There had to be a connection, a way to use the environment to their advantage. Athena. Lyle yelled into his earpiece, his voice desperate. Athena, can you hear me? Static. Come on. Athena. Lyle growled, slamming his fist against the stone wall. But then, miraculously, the static crackled and cleared for a moment, and Athena's voice broke through. I am here, Captain, she said, her voice calm but strained. I have been attempting to regain contact with you. The structure's systems are unpredictable, but I can help you. Lyle didn't waste time. The creature. What is it? How do we stop it? Athena's response was slow, the words clipped as if she were fighting to maintain her connection with him. I am scanning its energy signature now. It is an anomaly, Captain, an entity composed of pure energy, existing in a quantum state. It is likely tied to the structure itself. To disrupt it, you need to sever its connection to the artifact, the sphere. Lyle's heart skipped a beat. The sphere. How? Follow the symbols, Athena's voice instructed. The pattern on the walls may provide a key to unlocking the containment protocol. The artifact and the entity are linked. Disrupting the flow between them could render it dormant. Without another word, Lyle turned to Dr. Mira and the others. We need to find the sphere. It's the only way to stop this thing. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but there was no other choice. They had no way of defeating the creature head-on, not with conventional weapons, not without understanding the nature of this alien reality. They had to trust Athena's guidance and find the artifact before it was too late. The crew moved quickly, their eyes scanning the walls for the symbols that Athena had mentioned. As they advanced deeper into the cave, the symbols grew more intricate, glowing brighter in response to their presence. It was as if the cave itself was reacting to them, as if the walls were guiding them toward their destination. And then, in the distance, they saw it, the artifact, the sphere glowing with an ethereal light. It was suspended in midair, surrounded by a glowing energy field that hummed with the same pulse they had felt earlier. The creature, sensing their movement, let out an ear-splitting screech and lunged toward them with terrifying speed. But Lyle didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired at the sphere, knowing it was their only chance. The beam hit the energy field surrounding the sphere, causing the air to crackle with power. For a moment, nothing happened, and then a violent shockwave exploded outward, knocking the crew off their feet and sending them sprawling to the ground. The air was filled with a blinding light, the energy from the sphere resonating through the entire cave system. When the light faded, the creature was gone. Lyle opened his eyes, dazed but alive. The cave was silent now, eerily still. The oppressive energy that had filled the air had dissipated, leaving behind only the faint hum of the artifact. Dr. Mira slowly rose to her feet, her expression a mixture of disbelief and relief. Did we do it? Is it over? Lyle looked around, his heart still pounding. The creature was gone, but the danger wasn't entirely over. They were still trapped in this alien realm, with no clear way of returning home. But for now, they had survived. We're not out of the woods yet, Lyle said, his voice low but resolute. But we're still alive, and that's something. The crew gathered around the artifact, the pulsing energy from the sphere now a calm, steady rhythm. They had taken the first step toward understanding this alien world. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Lyle knew one thing for sure. They would find a way back. They had to. Their journey was far from over.